Emily and John had been married for 2 years. Initially, Emily's relationship with her mother-in-law, Mrs. Smith, was quite ordinary, but things started to change a month ago.
Angry, Emily, why haven't you gotten pregnant yet? You and John should go for a medical checkup.
After the checkup, Emily was diagnosed with a condition affecting fertility. The doctor suggested treatment or advanced options like IVF. Mrs. Smith, who was present, reacted harshly.
How can this be? A child not born from our flesh and blood would be a monster. Do you expect John to work hard all his life to raise a monster?
Shocked, Mom, please get up. Let's discuss this at home.
Emily nodded in agreement, knowing this wasn't something that could be resolved immediately. She crouched down to assist her mother-in-law, who had issues with her legs and spine.
Hopeful, Mom, be careful.
Before Emily could finish her sentence, Mrs. Smith's long nails raked across her face. Emily screamed, feeling a sticky sensation on her jaw.
Shouting, "Ah!"
Blood was dripping down her face and onto her neck. John continued to support his mother, not looking at Emily's injury or blaming his mother.
Serious, Miss Parker, please go to the second floor to get some medication.
The doctor pulled Emily out of the room, and a nurse took her for treatment.
Shouting, Emily Parker, that wicked woman. She wants to end the Smith family line.
Frowning, Emily followed the nurse. The young nurse, who looked like a college intern, cautiously asked her a question.
Whispering, "Sister, was that your mother-in-law just now?"
Sad, yes.
The nurse gently wiped away the dried blood on Emily's face.
Hopeful, you can always get a divorce. You don't have kids, so why put up with this?
Listening to her, Emily smiled and nodded, forcing a smile at herself in the mirror above the sink. After bandaging up, Emily saw a message from her husband.
Emily, my mom is emotionally unstable. You should go home and stay the night.
Emily didn't reply and took a cab to a hotel. Her family home was in this city, while her husband's family originally lived in the countryside. His father had passed away in a car accident when he was a child.
Raising my husband alone must have been tough.
Even though her husband had no car or house, Emily still married him. Their current home was bought with the down payment from her parents, and she had been paying the mortgage with her salary. The house was not in the city center, moderately priced, with 3 bedrooms and a living room, considering not leaving mother alone in the countryside.
My husband's salary isn't much, and I don't ask about it. He said he was saving up to buy a business car, so I didn't bother him.
When Emily received her husband's message, her heart turned cold. Her parents disapproved of her marriage to him. Now, returning home with a wounded face would be too much for them to bear, and she'd lose face. She walked into the luxurious hotel and gave her husband's phone number.
Ma'am, the balance on Mr. Smith's membership card isn't enough for a luxury suite. Would you like to top it up or book a single room?
Emily's eyebrows furrowed tighter. This card was issued when the hotel opened, and Emily and her husband were still dating. They had a grand opening promotion. They deposited $5,000, which doubled to $10,000. But they quickly got married and had only been there a handful of times since.
Can I see the transaction records? I suspect my card has been misused.
The receptionist was momentarily stunned, but then nodded and pulled up the transaction records on the computer.
Here are the records, ma'am.
Emily browsed through the records, and there were quite a few transactions, all for rooms costing less than $400 from last April to the beginning of this month, just 3 days ago. She had once found a torn corner of a condom wrapper in her husband's bag but didn't make a fuss about it then.
I wanted a gentle, considerate, and easy-to-control husband, but it seems I've got myself into trouble.
In the end, Emily paid extra for a luxury suite. After changing into disposable pajamas, she rebandaged her face with gauze. Her husband, John, called via video.
Hi, John.
She angled the phone to show only half of her face, not letting him see she was in a hotel. Since her parents didn't approve of him, he hadn't been to her house many times and didn't recognize she wasn't at home.
Why is my mom, who is usually so reasonable, being so stubborn now?
John pouted, trying to act cute. He was 2 years younger than Emily, and when they got together, he was still in college and often acted cute to seek her forgiveness. But now, seeing him act like this at nearly 30 made her feel nauseous.
How is Mom? Is she hurt?
Emily was disgusted. Clearly, she was the one bleeding and injured, yet he didn't ask about his wife.
My mom is fine, but she's still causing a fuss, insisting we get a separation.
Alarm bells rang in Emily's head. If John used this as a reason to separate from her, wouldn't she suffer in silence? Worse, her house might be considered joint property.
John? You wouldn't want to separate from me, would you?
Emily bit her tongue hard, and tears rolled down her cheeks. John was stunned. Emily was a few years older than him and quite independent, rarely crying or acting spoiled. He rolled his eyes, probably unsure how to respond.
Emily, I won't separate from you.
John smiled at her, comforted her briefly, and then told her to go to sleep.
All right, good night.
Emily felt speechless but hung up the phone. Now, she felt disgusted with her husband. Emily's husband worked as a project manager at her parents' company, earning a monthly salary of $6,000.
I initially thought $6,000 wasn't enough to support another woman, so my first suspect was his colleague, someone financially independent but needing his promotion.
Although Emily was only the HR director at the company, her parents were getting older, and she handled many things herself. Her husband requested that they keep their relationship private because he feared people would gossip about him climbing the ladder through her.
Michael, some companies have had scandals recently. Improve our company's surveillance, especially in the offices. We need to enhance work efficiency. Don't notify them, I want to set an example first.
Emily sat in her office chair, and Michael brought her coffee. She immediately gave the order. Thus, her husband's office was legally monitored by her. Michael, clearly afraid of Emily's new strict measures, completed the task efficiently by the next morning. From her office, Emily could monitor the entire company, with records saved for 7 days. Emily watched for half a month, but there wasn't a single suspicious woman around her husband's office. Feeling disheartened, Emily went home to cook.
My husband said he had a class reunion tonight and wouldn't be home, leaving just me and Mother for dinner.
If it were just Emily, she could have made instant noodles. But considering Mother, Emily dragged her tired body to make a dish of vinegar-sautéed shredded potatoes. Mother and Emily hadn't spoken for days.
Mom, let's eat.
Before Emily could finish, Mother slammed her chopsticks onto the bowl, and they bounced up, hitting Emily's other cheek.
Eat what? My son isn't here, and you serve me this?
Mother didn't care about Emily's injury, pointing at her nose and scolding her, her spit flying in her agitation.
It's vinegar-sautéed shredded potatoes, quite tasty.
Emily lowered her head, not looking at her, but a surge of anger rose within her.
Can't even spare some meat? No chili either? How can I eat this plain dish?
Mother sat with her arms crossed, and Emily couldn't help but laugh.
You don't eat chili, do you?
Emily started cleaning up the spilled potatoes.
You didn't ask if I wanted it in the potatoes.
Mother rolled her eyes and threw a glass onto the floor.
So, you're just looking for trouble, aren't you?
Emily stood up, holding the plate, and looked down at the disdainful old lady. Mother seemed surprised by Emily's defiance, hesitated for a moment, then nodded.
What can you do to me?
Before Mother could close her mouth, Emily had already dumped the steaming hot potatoes onto her face. While Mother was still in shock, Emily deliberately twisted the plate on her face. Mother pushed Emily away and rushed to the bathroom.
How does it taste? Better than with chili, right?
Emily was genuinely happy, laughing a bit maniacally. Mother washed her face while screaming.
Lunatic! You're a lunatic!
Emily stood outside the bathroom, waiting for Mother to come out, unable to suppress her joy, chuckling softly. When Mother came out, her hair was wet, indicating she had cleaned up thoroughly. Seeing Emily, she was startled, then relaxed when she saw Emily wasn't holding anything.
Lunatic, I'll have John divorce you.
She muttered as she walked to her room.
I didn't want to fight with an elderly person,
Emily said, deliberately stepping closer. Mother hurriedly fled into her bedroom, locking the door behind her. My husband came back a little after 10. He never stays out all night, or rather, he doesn't dare to. It was a rule I set during our courtship. He probably doesn't want to lose his home and job. I lay in the bedroom, not going out. The door was open, and I heard the lock on Mother's room turn. She rushed out, clinging to my husband and crying.
Emily has gone mad, John. You must divorce her, John.
Mother peeked into my room, seemingly frightened by me.
Mom, what are you talking about? Emily is so good to me. Where would I find such a good wife if I divorced her? My husband's face looked flushed, probably from drinking.
She's crazy. And you still treat her like a treasure. Mother's face turned pale as she rushed to the balcony.
My husband was startled, sobering up a bit. I leisurely put on my slippers and walked to the balcony to enjoy the drama. Although the balcony had floor-to-ceiling windows, only a small part at the top could be opened. Mother, being quite short, stuck her head out of the window, struggling to hold onto the frame with both hands.
If you don't want a divorce, then she has to leave the house. Mother shook off my husband's hand as he tried to pull her back.
If you don't get off my balcony, I'll have to invite you down myself. I felt like I was in a comedy, not caring about anyone else's feelings.
Mother glared at me viciously before nimbly climbing down from the windowsill.
John, you saw it. Emily has gone mad. Mother didn't forget to complain to my husband. My husband seemed shocked by the drastic change in the relationship between the two of us, who had been getting along well just a month ago. After a moment of contemplation, he decided to appease his mom.
Emily, can you stay at your parents' house for a day? My mom was just agitated at the hospital. She'll be fine in a few days.
Isn't this my home? I stretched and walked back to the bedroom. Maybe Mom wants to go back to her hometown. You should take her back when you have time.
I deliberately touched on Mother's sore spot. She had been bullied by relatives when she was a widow in her hometown. That's why I sympathetically brought her to live in the city. I closed the door, unable to hear their conversation anymore. About half an hour later, my husband hugged me from behind. I was already half asleep, and my mood instantly soured. In a daze, I smelled an unfamiliar perfume on him, and the only word that came to mind was disgusting.
I'm sorry, Emily. I know you've been wronged. My husband held me tightly.
I pushed him away slightly.
I'm tired, let's sleep.
This was exactly what he wanted to hear. After spending the afternoon with his lover, he probably didn't have the energy to deal with me.
Mom said she's been too emotional lately and didn't mean to hurt you. She's agreed to stay in the countryside for half a month, my husband said affectionately, stroking my head.
I was surprised that Mother was willing to go back to the countryside and wondered what my husband had promised her.
By the way, John. I've been feeling down lately too. I want to go to Fuzhou with my parents for more than half a month. You'll be alone at home. Can you manage?
I immediately came up with a plan. My husband, a notorious penny pincher, had been splurging on a hotel room with his mistress. With both Mother and me out of the house, he would surely bring his mistress home.
It's fine, Emily. You deserve a break. My husband looked genuinely happy and soon fell asleep.
The next morning, my husband drove my car to take Mother away. Since she was only going to the countryside for half a month, she didn't take much with her. As soon as I heard them close the door, I called a cleaning service and had someone install hidden cameras in the house. Everything was ready. I bought a ticket to Fuzhou and went back to my parents' house. Yes, I didn't go to Fuzhou. I stayed in the city, waiting for the right moment. Emily entered the house with some luggage. The housekeeper, Auntie, saw her pulling a suitcase from the garden and was startled.
Miss, why are you back?
What? Not happy to see me? Where are Mom and Dad?
Auntie took the suitcase from Emily.
They're watching TV in the living room. You'll see them as soon as you go in.
Just as Emily reached the entrance, a young girl wearing her slippers appeared in front of her.
Auntie, who is she?
Emily's mood plummeted again. She didn't like others touching her things, especially personal items like clothes and shoes.
Oh, dear, I forgot to introduce her. This is my daughter, Sophia. She's attending university in the city, a sophomore this year. Come on, Sophia, say hello to your sister.
Hello.
Emily nodded, acknowledging Sophia but noting her reluctance to call her sister.
Quite an eye you have.
She walked straight to the living room, leaping onto the sofa next to Dad, who was watching TV.
What happened to your face, Emily? Did John do this?
No, it was a misunderstanding with a client. The client's wife mistook me for someone else.
Emily feared Dad would disrupt her plans, so she made up a story. Just then, Sophia entered the living room, trembling slightly.
Sister, you should take care of that wound. You're so beautiful, you don't want a scar.
Sophia sat next to Emily, holding a glass of water, offering it to her. Emily nodded, about to thank her when she smelled the same perfume she had smelled on her husband the night before.
That woman wouldn't listen to my explanation. I even told her that if someone were to be kept, it should be someone young. She didn't listen and scratched me right away.
Emily said casually, holding Sophia's hand. Sophia looked young and gullible, even a bit foolish. She seemed flustered, a hint of panic in her eyes. But Emily couldn't be sure it was her. As soon as Emily entered the room, Auntie had already placed her suitcase to the side. She walked into the bathroom to freshen up. The mirror was a bit foggy, and there was a sample of shampoo next to the toothpaste that she didn't recognize. Frowning, she finished brushing her teeth, intending to ask Auntie about it. Just as she was about to leave the room, she turned back and walked to the dressing room. Since Sophia had worn her slippers, Emily deduced that Sophia had some vanity and dared to touch her things. With her dressing room filled with luxury items, could Sophia resist the temptation? Emily entered the dressing room, and it wasn't as orderly as she had left it. The expensive bags were still there, but her scarves and jewelry had clearly been moved.
Auntie, please bring Sophia here.
Emily maintained a dignified smile, though Auntie looked a bit flustered. Back in school, her friends used to joke, when Emily Parker smiles, life and death are unpredictable.
Emily, did you need something?
Sophia asked nervously, twisting her fingers. Emily sat on the small sofa outside the dressing room, looking at her.
You touched my things in the dressing room, didn't you?
Emily watched as cold sweat almost broke out on Sophia's forehead.
No, I didn't.
She bit her lip, looking like she was about to cry.
I have surveillance in my dressing room.
Emily wasn't lying. She had a controlling nature and had installed cameras since she was away for long periods.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Emily. I know I was wrong. I just looked. I didn't take anything.
Sophia couldn't stand Emily's calm and cold demeanor and fell to her knees, begging for forgiveness.
Since your family's house was demolished, you can rent a place in the city. Auntie provides food and lodging, but you should move out of my house by tomorrow.
Sophia's tears fell onto the wooden floor in large drops. Auntie, seeing Emily's impatience, dragged Sophia out of the room. I could have tolerated Sophia. But I couldn't tolerate my marriage anymore. If Sophia was the third party in this relationship, then kicking her out of my house would only mean she'd soon move into another one of my homes. As expected, on the third day, I saw Sophia through the hidden camera in our house. She was facing away from the camera, wiping her tears. And my beloved husband, like a devoted follower, was helping her take off her shoes and socks. I felt a pang of bitterness and turned on the audio.
John, why doesn't my sister like me?
My heart skipped a beat. Did my husband know about my relationship with Sophia?
That house is mine too, but she falsely accused me of stealing her things. I'm her half-sister.
Sophia sobbed uncontrollably. My husband said nothing, just kissed her lips. Sophia seemed comforted and smiled sweetly.
I knew John would always take care of me and wouldn't let me suffer.
I recorded the screen while laughing almost to the point of breathlessness. But I kept Sophia's words in mind. She said she was my half-sister. Did John know that the sister she was talking about was me? When this thought crossed my mind, I truly felt frightened. My marriage might be unhappy, but no one could stop me from living happily with my parents. The doctor, unable. Emily kicked hard under the bed, imagining it must hurt Sophia a lot.
Why aren't you saying anything? Don't you miss me?
Her husband tried to hold her and pull her onto the bed.
Of course, I miss my wife.
Don't rush.
Emily pushed him away and kicked Sophia again with all her strength.
Ah!
Sophia couldn't hold back this time. Emily smiled, thinking she might have caused some internal damage.
So, you were hiding here, Sophia dear.
Emily squatted down to look at Sophia under the bed, then grabbed her hair and pulled her out. A handful of hair came off in her hand.
How could you do this to me?
But you took my dad. All these years, Dad never came to see me.
No, you took my lover. And your mom took my mom's lover.
Sophia's face changed color several times, unable to say a word. Seeing her like this, Emily gave up the idea of scratching her face.
Sophia dear, if you don't put on your clothes and leave, are you waiting for me to dress you?
Hearing this, Sophia's eyes widened, and she quickly got up, dressed, and left trembling.
Why are you standing there? Throw out everything she used.
Emily's husband stood there, looking foolish. While he was cleaning up, she picked up a strand of Sophia's fallen hair and put it in her pocket.
John, stop cleaning for now. Ask Sophia if she's willing to have a child for you. We can offer her some money.
Emily watched the smile spread across her husband's face, and she smiled too. John was just as foolish. Emily looked at the DNA evidence showing Sophia was related to her father, feeling a bit uneasy.
Hey, John, why don't you bring Mother back too?
She thought for the last time, if anyone tried to tear her away from her parents, they were doomed.
Huh?
Emily had never been the type to tolerate her mother-in-law's abuse or her husband's betrayal.
Sophia said she's willing to have a child for you after she graduates from college. Tell Mom about it, make her happy, and then she and I can reconcile.
She smiled, continuing to deceive her husband. John was perceptive, but always seemed like a fool in front of her. That's why she chose him, no background, easy to manipulate. If she wanted him to know something, he would. If she wanted to deceive him, he would never find out.
All right, I'll tell her.
Emily hid the DNA test results in her office and reviewed her work for the next few days before heading home. At home, Sophia was setting the table, and Mother was happily helping her. When Mother saw Emily come home, she sneered.
Oh, the Baron hen knows how to come home?
Isn't this my home? What are you talking about, Mother?
Bah, you wish.
Mother spat on the floor, disgusting Emily so much that she went straight to the bedroom. Sophia handed Mother a bowl of rice, trying to smooth things over.
Auntie, don't be mad at sister. She's just a stubborn and ungrateful rock.
Mother immediately beamed and nodded vigorously. A year ago, Emily had the same happiness as Sophia. But such fleeting happiness is too cheap for her. She doesn't need it. Sophia believed her happy days were beginning. She could have the baby, receive a large sum of money, and even become the mistress of the Smith family. Despite not living in the luxurious Parker family villa, she thought she had one. This thought persisted until she received a message from her advisor. Sophia stared at the pixelated photos of herself and John, unable to react.
Sophia, this gentleman's wife wants to talk to you. Otherwise, she will post the video on the school forum.
Sophia wondered if it was April Fool's Day. Emily Parker was supposed to be an infertile woman, relying on her to maintain her absurd marriage. Why would she contact the advisor and threaten her? When Sophia added Emily on WeChat, she reverted to her usual cautious demeanor. The disdain and contempt she showed at home were nowhere to be seen. An hour later, Sophia had sent more than 20 messages.
Emily, is there something you need? Why did you contact my advisor? When did you record the video? Are you busy?
Emily waited until Sophia's messages went from questioning to losing confidence before replying.
Now go sue John for coercing you and recording a video to threaten you.
Sophia was silent for a while before sending a question mark. On the other side of the phone, Sophia broke into a cold sweat, weighing her options.
You have to choose between your reputation and his.
I said, leaving no room for negotiation. I always handled things in my own unique way.
I understand.
Sophia replied affirmatively, making me feel a sense of satisfaction.
I have a small duplex near your school. You can stay there for now, so your husband doesn't retaliate against you.
Thank you.
With all the plans in place, I tidied up my office and went home. Mother still greeted me with a sour expression.
Is work that easy? I wonder how much you can even earn. I don't know what John saw in you.
Hearing her words, I felt an almost manic urge to laugh out loud, to laugh so hard I couldn't breathe.
Mom, did John tell you whose name is on the deed for this house?
I already knew the answer.
Humph, I know it's in both your names.
John, oh John. The house was only in my name. His secure job was also thanks to my connections. To save face, he told Mother it was all his hard work.
I really want to divorce John now, Mom. Did you know Sophia is going to sue John for assault? If we don't get divorced, I'll have to compensate her too.
I said, frowning and looking aggrieved.
Didn't she just agree to have a baby for John? Stop trying to fool me.
Mother looked distrustful. It seemed Sophia had her wrapped around her finger these days.
You know, with all the money we've spent on the house and car over the years, we don't have much left. Maybe Sophia isn't satisfied.
I made some instant noodles and walked into the bedroom, leaving Mother to ponder in the dark living room. Mother had manic tendencies and severe obsessions. When their relationship was still good, Emily had done a psychological survey on her mother-in-law. Initially, Emily treated it as entertainment, but after Mother repeatedly attacked her, Emily became more convinced of her thoughts. Husband seemed to have received a court notice these past few days. He looked mentally exhausted and haggard. Sophia had also been obediently staying away from home.
No, Sophia, this way we'll lose the case. I don't have enough evidence.
Okay, continue to sue him for surrogacy.
Under Emily's instructions, Sophia made husband more and more worn out each day. Emily even hired people to cause trouble at his company. After a week of relentless pressure, husband couldn't help but tell Mother about it. Emily had anticipated this, he could only confide in Mother. Her indifferent attitude towards him made complaining to her pointless. Emily watched through the surveillance as he buried his head in Mother's arms, crying like a giant baby, while she lovingly stroked his head.
That wretched woman, trying to stop me from having grandchildren, trying to ruin our family? I will make sure she suffers.
Emily repeatedly listened to Mother's words. It was amusing, foolish, and filled with anticipation. She wondered if her dear mother could make Sophia disappear from her sight forever. Emily confronted her mother with a worried expression.
Mother, what should we do? John said he might lose the case and could even be in trouble for a few years. I heard that Sophia bought a house near the school with John's money over the years. How could she be so heartless to John?
She watched as her mother's back hunched over, and she began to breathe heavily. These days, Emily rarely saw her mother at home. She deliberately drove her father's car around Sophia's school. Finally, she saw her mother. In the neighborhood at 10 o'clock at night, her mother was cautiously following Sophia. Sophia, carefree as always, didn't notice. What a fool! Since her mother found her, Emily turned around and went back to her parents' house. Her mother followed Sophia all the way to the 11th floor hallway.
Stop!
Sophia was startled and took 2 steps back.
You wretched woman, why did you sue my son?
Her mother rushed forward, trying to scratch Sophia. But Sophia, being young and strong, easily pushed her far away.
You thought your son was a catch, but he's just a freeloader living off the Parker family. Even if I had a child with him, he couldn't afford to raise it.
Her mother's face turned pale. She pulled a fruit knife from her coat pocket and charged at Sophia. Sophia, cornered with nowhere to run, could only use her arm to block the knife. But her mother, in a frenzy, seemed intent on turning her into minced meat.
Help! Somebody help!
Unfortunately, the high electricity costs and short-term leases meant that few people bought commercial properties in the city. The high-priced duplex she flaunted at school became her tomb. A few days later, news came that Emily's mother had attacked Sophia. By the time Emily found out, her mother had already been taken away in handcuffs.
I wonder how Sophia is doing. I should visit her in the hospital.
Unfortunately, Sophia hadn't responded to any of Emily's messages. In the end, Emily decided to wait for her husband to come to her. His little lover had betrayed him, sued him, and then got hurt by his mother. Now his mother was in jail for intentional harm, and he had no one left but Emily. Emily stayed by his side only because she wanted to see him fall further, to see how big a fish she could catch in her net. On the 3rd day, Emily finally received a call from her husband.
Emily, my mom hurt Sophia.
Her husband had been running between the court and the detention center for the past 2 days and hadn't been home. Emily didn't expect his first words to bring her such a surprise.
What? How did Mother find Sophia?
Emily thought Mother would at most ruin Sophia's reputation or scratch her a bit, but she didn't expect her grudge to be this intense.
She must have followed her to school. I don't know what to do. The best I can hope for is a reduced sentence. Honey, you're all I have left.
Her husband was sobbing, completely unaware that Emily was the mastermind behind it all.
Then wait for our divorce papers.
Emily was so happy, she felt like she couldn't breathe. Her husband was silent for a long time before finally speaking.
What?
Emily smiled and hung up the phone. Later, Emily was lying on the sofa at her parents' house, taking a nap, when Auntie Grace burst into the living room, wailing.
What now?
Auntie Grace's cries grew closer, and Emily opened her eyes to see her rushing towards her.
My daughter, my daughter.
Startled, Emily quickly moved away.
Stay back!
Auntie Grace reached out towards her, and Emily, having been scratched by her mother-in-law before, had some psychological trauma. She screamed, blocking with her arm. Her forearm was immediately covered in scratches.
What's going on here?
Emily's mom arrived first, screaming as she pulled Auntie Grace away. Auntie Grace seemed to come to her senses, and Emily, still shaken, was protected behind her mom.
Your daughter seduced my son-in-law and wanted to sue him. My in-law acted in a fit of rage. What kind of revenge are you seeking from me?
Auntie Grace tried to argue, but Emily was tired of listening.
My daughter was so outstanding.
The key to my room was given by you, and you introduced my husband to her. You deserve this.
Auntie Grace looked at her hands in confusion, almost forgetting what she had done. Emily didn't falsely accuse her of anything.
What happened, Emily?
Dad, with his bad leg, arrived a bit late.
Dad, Auntie Grace came at me. Look.
She immediately complained, wanting to test Auntie Grace's standing in Dad's heart.
I think Auntie Grace didn't mean it. Let her apologize and go get some medication.
His words made Emily's heart grow colder. I came to the court for 2 things. 1. My husband's infidelity and his departure with nothing. 2. Auntie Grace accused of stealing my luxury items. Of course, Auntie Grace didn't actually do it. I just wanted her out of my house.
Emily. Why are you abandoning me? You loved me so much, you even forgave me when you knew I cheated.
Before the trial, John was no longer pleading but questioning me. He couldn't understand why a compliant, temperless, wealthy heiress who loved him would divorce him when they could have a perfect life together.
Don't flatter yourself. Do you think I'm some kind of fool? You know, your mother helped me deal with the threat of an illegitimate child taking my things. How about this? You can still come to work at the company, consider it my compensation to you. How about that?
I had solid evidence, and he didn't even hire a lawyer, seemingly giving up the fight. Looking at his unshaven face, it was hard to connect him with the somewhat handsome face that clung to me in college. I was 3 years older than him, but looking at him now, he seemed older than me. Leaving with nothing, my husband's end was still somewhat dignified. At least it was better than his mother's life sentence and his lover's tragic end.
Auntie, John and I are already divorced.
As for Auntie Grace, when I sued her, she was still blaming me, saying my family had caused her daughter's demise. I could only smile and wave.
My daughter is gone, and even if I had stolen your things, there is no proof.
She was mentally fragile. I am a mentally strong person, never believing that someone would immediately lose their sanity and rationality after a setback. Now, seeing the fate of my husband's mother and Auntie Grace, I couldn't help but believe it. Auntie Grace had no relatives, so I discussed with my parents and sent her to a nursing home. I could see the reluctance and pity on my parents' faces, but I didn't want to speculate whether my dad's expression contained anything else.
I find it hard to believe in love or rely on my so-called lover, hence, I am who I am, an independent me.
I nestled in my mother's embrace. She probably never imagined what her gentle, elegant, and sensible daughter had done in her life. After the separation, John tried to find a new job on his own, but with just a bachelor's degree, affording a car and house in this city was like building castles in the air. Moreover, he had been idling away at the Parker family business for so many years that his enthusiasm had long been stifled. Later, he began to miss the easy life of a spacious apartment, a job with no overtime, weekends off, and full benefits, and he missed me. So, I saw John again.
Emily.
He looked like he had aged 10 years in a short time, his complexion very poor.
Save the sentimentality. I see you're here for a job interview. Let's get to the point.
I said, not looking up from my computer.
You said that to make it up to me, you would let me continue working at the company.
He had lost his former pride, speaking timidly, word by word.
We currently have openings for, cleaning staff and maintenance workers. Which one do you want to apply for?
I smiled as I watched his face contort.
Emily, stop joking. I have my dignity.
The veins on John's forehead bulged, but he still didn't dare to get angry with me.
Sorry, your dignity means nothing to me.
I said, hoping he would lose his temper so I could have security throw him out. My promise back then was just a way to humiliate him.
Emily, I know I was wrong. Can I still be a project manager?
John's continued humility surprised me, but I had no intention of forgiving him. I sent him to the lowest department to start from the bottom, but he didn't last long. He was repeatedly fired for not meeting performance standards. Later, I heard he returned to his hometown, becoming the subject of gossip among the locals. I nestled in Mom's arms, telling her John's story. Mom stroked my head, while Dad sat on the other side of the sofa.